Welcome to You Can't Laugh at That, the podcast where we take topics that aren't funny and we prove that they are funny. This is part of the You Can't Laugh at Work series where we take that time and place where it seems inappropriate to incorporate the themes of stand-up comedy, and we find reasons why it's not only appropriate but beneficial to use some of the same skills that a comedian uses to connect with an audience and to be successful and to find humor in any given situation, and how that works in terms of a leader doing the same thing. In fact, some of the skills mirror one another. And on today's episode of the podcast, we are featuring Trent Kocurek, CEO and co-founder of Team Airship, a web and mobile app design company based out of Birmingham, Alabama, that has grown 54% since the start of the pandemic. So we want to know why they're so successful. And a lot of it has to do with the way they approach their culture, the way they approach creativity, the way they approach asking questions, and the way they approach their teams and their families and the human side of the global pandemic. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of You Can't Laugh at That's You Can't Laugh at Work series with Trent Kocurek. First and foremost, we're going through a lot of I hate saying unprecedented, but it really is. But at the a lot of new things are happening. The things that were going to happen have been accelerated technology-wise, remote working, and there's more and more money being poured into automation and things like that, and AI, which is great. It's going to free us up to do a lot of more creative work rather than more manufacturing-based work, and that's cool to me. And you mentioned that you have a passion for solving problems and tinkering and seeing how things work. How have you applied that to everything that's going on in the world? And how have you applied that as well to your team and leading them?
I tend to think on the big connecting of the dots. That's usually where I live, is kind of the 100,000-foot view. But then when I find something, I'll swoop in, and that's where the tinkering comes in. It's like, okay, that interests me. Let me come in and find that. And really, I've found that with people, their emotions, how they think, how they interact, how they connect their purpose with the value that they're providing in the work that they do. So one of the things, we've actually been remote for several years from the get-go. We've always been remote first. We do have a home here in Birmingham, which we love. We love this city, a lot going on here, but we also have folks in 13 different states. So when people are just now going remote, I'm telling them, like, this isn't really remote, because at the end of the day, they're not only remote, but there's kids home. There's stresses with their spouses or their partners for work. So what used to be my focus on tinkering, which was, hey, let's focus more on, we're all kind of happy, we got good home lives, everything's going on okay there. Let's really focus on how we do really, really great work and connect your purpose with the work that we deliver and the value that we deliver. What's changed over the past year is we can't, and it wasn't even ignoring it, but you have to very much understand what everyone's bringing to work now, and understand their families more, understand their spouses and partners more, understand that work actually is, we're trying to make it somewhat the most predictable aspect of their life, where as an agency and what we do, and typically we're solving a lot of different problems. So there's some lightning in the bottle happening. There's some sparks flying here and there as we go. But we've had to shift our mindset and say, okay, where we used to appreciate and kind of just hang on to the fact that they're probably having a great home life in a lot of ways. We see families and kids. Now we got to realize that that's probably not happening. How do we bring that into the mix? So over the past year, it's really, honestly, the word I would use is flexible and grace and empathy as much as possible. We are not a large company. We're at 36 people now. We have a couple more. We are growing, but even when this started, we were in the 30s, low 30s, and that's a tiny company. So how did we were trying to find really good ways of balancing productivity and actually delivering value, because we didn't slow down. We grew 54% last year. Where a lot of companies closed down, we actually grew in a lot of ways. But you do that, and you have to find ways of doing that growth. So a lot of what, again, the tinkering and the kind of figuring out over the past year has been bringing families into the mix, finding ways to connect that are maybe a little bit outside of the box what we used to have, making sure that families are more involved in some of our events, making sure it's safe and okay for someone to, if a kid walks in to the room and sits behind them, that's fine now. It's really just making those types of things normal and comfortable, and ensuring that people have that, because that is a friction point for everyone right now. They have no idea. Even if you've worked remote, you haven't worked remote with a screaming toddler in the other room. Like there's things that have happened. Some folks have, but so it's really, that's been what we're tinkering, is how do we continue to grow while also understanding there's a huge friction point with families in the world as it stands today, and emotions are high. So we can dig further into some of those things that we tried to do. But that's where a lot of my mind has been for the past year, is how do we keep our people happy on purpose, is what I like to call, like they're on their purpose, they're living out what they're supposed to be living out, but also doing it intentionally. And then again, taking into account the families and how that affects work in general.
Yeah, the human side of things, like that's, breaking down those silos. If, for so long, the standard workplace culture is, you clock in, you do your job as it's assigned, you go through the same routine every day, you work alongside your co-workers, and then you clock out and you don't see them. Now, more and more over time, we've dove into the interpersonal connection of it, and trying to maintain that on a remote level is so, it's a new challenge. But it also gives us, I think, a bigger opportunity to connect, because now we do have this snapshot into people's lives, right? So you do see the kid come into the room, and in a lot of cases, in a lot of the presentations I give, I'll have the icebreaker question of what's the funniest thing that's happened on Zoom, at a Zoom meeting that you've been in. And a lot of times people will be like, yeah, somebody's kid came into the shot, or somebody's cat came into the shot, and we didn't want to mention it. And it's like, this is a perfect opportunity to mention it. It's a perfect opportunity to create that connection and to break down that silo for just a second. And so, the fact that you're doing that is obviously, I mean, you had experience doing remote before, but it wasn't that big of a pivot point. Now you've made a point, you use the word connect a lot, like making connections between things. Are you a person that like throws a bunch of stuff against the wall and then figures out how to connect them? Or are you more analytical in your approach?
So I like to call it, I'm selectively detailed.
Okay.
So
That's a good.
when it comes to again, people and finding their purpose and solving problems with technology, I can get really in the weeds. I'm a developer by trade. I've been writing code for over 17 years now. Mm-hmm. So I can get in the weeds. I can write code. I can actually build things. So yes, I can get analytical, but some things you don't need to get analytical. Some things, if you get too analytical, you actually lose the magic of what this is supposed to be. So I do like, with some ideas and brainstorming, I think some of the most creative things happen when we do throw something against the wall, and it's not just me throwing them against the wall, it's a diverse group of people throwing them against the wall, and then we shuffle it out. So we actually have services around what we do in Airship that help with that. We start from ground zero and we brainstorm. But yes, I'm selectively detailed. I can get analytical, but I really do like and value diverse opinions bringing in what I may not have seen personally.
Yeah, that 10,000 foot view that you're talking about, you just kind of you work it, you hone it in as time goes. That's how I work too. Now, you do a lot of creative work with Airship, obviously with your clients. What does a creative meeting at Airship look like when you are pitching those ideas?
Yeah. So one of our services, we call it is our mapping. By the way, you're going to hear, if we start talking about the work, we brand everything. We also feel like that's a big part of what we do. So
yeah.
All of our roles are branded, all of our services are branded in that Airship nautical type of thing. So our mapping is that process where either a company comes in that's established, that has a new opportunity that they're trying to go after, or in a lot of ways also brand new companies. There's an idea in their mind, they don't necessarily know how to articulate it, they don't necessarily know how to build it. So we have amazing people here at Airship that, especially on the UX side of things and on the design side of things, and we call them our project navigators, our project managers, that we have this mapping. We bring the client in and we take them through workshops of saying, okay, what problem are you truly trying to solve? Who are you trying to solve it for? And asking these questions. And it's really, you're going to see it. It's more questioning that helps bring out what that vision that they have is. And then what we land on is, okay, great. We feel like we've got a good problem statement here. We feel like we've got a good understanding of who we're trying to solve the problem for. Is there any ideas that we may need to ask some more questions? Is it your problem that's in this little bubble, or is this problem that you're trying to solve much broader? Let's get out there. Let's do some user research. Let's start talking to people and understanding their point of view as well. And then lastly, at the end, and this is what people really pay us for, is we work with several. I mean, I think we're about to hit our 100th client, and is what I was told yesterday.
Awesome.
But so we've worked with about to be 100 clients that are in several different industries, and problems, when you live on that 10,000 to 100,000 foot view, problems actually look very similar from that view, and no matter what industry you're in. So during that mapping process, what we also do is we bring in that industry knowledge of, okay, yes, you're a church and a ministry, which we work with a lot of great ministries and churches. We also work with this insurance company. You would never connect that dot, but they had a very similar problem, and this is how we solved it for them. Let's see if we can't interact and bring some of those learnings into that as well. Mm-hmm. So the creative process is really just asking a lot of questions and getting it out, but then connecting some of the dots that we've already solved in the past and bringing that new insight to our clients.
Questions are one of the most powerful creative tools, because when you ask questions, you force yourself to think outside of, your current perspective. And God, would you ask somebody questions? I mean, in my consulting work and meeting with new clients, I mean, that's all the whole conversation is I'll ask a question and I'll learn everything. And then I'll ask them, and so that's great. Now, how do you use that strategy when it comes to helping your own team members, if they're going through a creative block or a personal roadblock in their day-to-day experience?
Yeah, that's actually where if I spend 100% of my time there, I think I'm adding the most value to people. It's when I'm actually trying to dive in and do some of the execution where I get a little squirrely. So if I'm spending my time there, absolutely. So decision making and feeling passionate about what you do really comes from being part of that decision, understanding that it may have come from me. So questions, you're right, they're super powerful, because what they do is they typically help the person realize that they already had the answer, and you're just helping them get to that answer. Mm-hmm. Right? So as much as I can and we can as a team change the what if you did this, to a how might we do this type of question, even if it's a little bit of a leading, that's what we try to do. How might we solve this specific problem? How might we, go about answering that specific question for this client? And when you turn things into questions very intentionally that way, and I try my best to do so, that shows some vulnerability that I don't have all the answers either, and you shouldn't have all the answers. And two, it helps them connect more with the solution that we end up with, because again, they had a big play in coming to the solution. So yes, absolutely. I think questions are superpowers. Some people are amazing at them. I try my best. I keep practicing. But yes, I try my best whenever possible, whenever I see this idea, especially when someone's passionate about solving it. How do I get them to solve it? And that's usually through questioning.
When you get a new client, or when a client wants to start on a new project, now they typically would come into the office, correct?
In the past,
before,
we do work across states though too. So we have clients in 17 different states and in Canada. So for the most part, we love bringing them in. We think a lot of creativity happens there, but we also run off the notion of if one's remote, everyone's remote. Because if you're in a room with 6 people and then one person's up on the TV and then I'm having a side conversation right here, David's wondering what you and I are talking about, right? So, so we've gotten some tools now that we do these remotely as well now, and we've seen some great success.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That was my next question is has that creativity continued to flourish on a remote level? So
it has. You can't replace the people aspect no matter what technology you have. There's something about just patting someone on the shoulder and that human touch, but we have definitely brought some tools and gotten as close as we can, and we feel like we've seen some great success there.
You can't laugh at that.
You Can't Laugh at That is brought to you by Water Cooler Comedy. Now, for too long, we've been asking the question, should work be focused on work or fun? But Mark Twain once said that work and play are 2 words used to describe the same thing under different circumstances. So my point is that we're asking the wrong question. Instead of asking, should work be work or fun. The question should be, how can we make work fun? Whether it's a keynote speech, a half-day workshop, a 90-day consulting program, a customized corporate comedy experience for you and your team as you try to figure out how to reboard, how to get back to work after working virtually for a year. Why humor in the workplace? Well, studies have shown that humor builds resilience. It allows us to adapt to problems more quickly, more creatively, and more It allows us to adapt to problems more quickly, more creatively, and more I can't say collaboratively. It allows us to adapt to not being able to say collaboratively correctly. Because not only does laughter make us feel better, it makes us work better too. So why not make work the time and place to laugh? Check out watercoolercomedy.org. Like I said, I'm a comedian. I'm a nerd when it comes to humor theory and to getting into the biology and how the brain works when we laugh. Now, when we laugh, it's our brain's way of acknowledging a new unexpected perspective. It's that jolt. The same parts of our brain light up when we solve a problem as when we get a joke, which is so interesting to me. It's why I find value in using humor in the workplace, especially with new problems. Because I mean, if our brains are already primed through laughter, then when a problem comes up, we're quicker to solve it. So what role does laughter and humor play in the day-to-day experience of working at Airship?
So I love that, because my when you just explained humor and how it lit up, I laughed, because obviously I just learned a new perspective there. So right. This is why it was so interesting when you reached out and when we talked a little bit, and I saw what you were doing is I really thought through that, like, how do we use humor? And this is where I do kind of get analytical. I don't feel like you can laugh at yourself until you know yourself. I don't feel like you can laugh at yourself until you feel comfortable with what you know about yourself. I don't think you can laugh at work at yourself until you feel comfortable that everybody else knows who you are and that you are comfortable with them knowing. So it kind of, that's where I immediately go, and I start looking back at the things that we've shared of our failures. It's typically what we laugh about, or we have to laugh at some things that we failed on, right? So when I look back, it's we're a development company and a design company, and then we have all of the amazing people around that help us grow as a company. But within that, a lot of our developers, they'll share and I don't know if you're a GIF or a GIF person. I don't want to have that battle today, but either way, they're GIFing and GIFing on really it's failures in the development side, like submitting code on a Friday and then a bug coming up. So we share a lot of that, and we laugh a lot about, and underneath we're like, we've done that. We're kind of laughing at ourselves when we're sharing that, and I think that's a big key. But just yesterday, actually, we have our crew Q&A. I have it every 2 weeks. It's where we can be very transparent. We ask very hard questions. You can ask them anonymously, or you can put your name to them. And I sit there and I answer very honestly and open and direct. But one of the ones that came up was, somehow we got to failure, and how do we share those failures more? Because I think people need to see that we got junior level folks coming in and senior level folks coming in. They need to see that you can fail along the way. So I actually am probably going to build this weekend, but we use Slack, and we're going to create a channel called Regrets, and we're going to spell it. I don't know if you've ever seen that meme where someone got a tattoo that says no regrets, and regrets was spelled incorrectly. So we're going to name our Slack channel Regrets Incorrectly. And we're going to use the same tool that I built for our culture. We call it Crew internally, where people can submit regrets on a whim. Hey, I just hit this. I failed here. I'm going to tell everybody about it. So that's one way that we're starting to talk about it, but and laugh about it a bit more. But I think the focus for us and how we use humor has really been around making people feel as comfortable as they can about who they are, and being able to laugh at themselves and be okay with failure, as long as you're learning from that failure, is how we've used humor. Not probably the same way that you're talking, but I think that is the core and the base, is creating that environment where humor is actually okay and people can laugh at themselves.
So you're just connecting the failure and reframing it in a way as, oh, this is just part of the process. Like, it's not, and that's one thing that I think our schools do so poorly is we frame failure as like the worst thing,
Mm-hmm.
rather than, my best teachers were the ones that would pull me aside and say, what did you learn from this? Versus like, you're a bad student and that's it, so reframing failure and connecting that to eventual success, I think is vital. And you're obviously subscribing to that belief as well. Now on your website, it mentions that learning is built into your budget of time. So like, what sort of learning do you provide for your team? Like, is it training? Is it like mental? Is it skills as far as development?
Early on when we started, and this is, there's a lot of things we did early on that if someone looked at us from a business perspective said, that's a crazy idea. You should not do that. You do not have the money to do that. And they were right in a lot of ways, but we've seen a lot of really good success with it too. So one of the things that we do specifically, it's been around from the beginning, is called 10% time. This is something we learned from Google and we learned from others. They had 20% time, but we don't have $500 billion in the bank.
Yeah.
So we had 10% time. So cut that in half. We have obviously 250 billion in the bank. We don't. So we put in 10% time. And early on with this 10% time is what we know is that when you work on yourself and when you work on getting better at your craft, and we give you time to do that, that A, builds trust with the company, because we're not just saying, hey, use your nights and weekends always to get better, and then come on in and show me how you got better. It's understanding that trust that we know that you're not and never will be perfect. And we're going to meet you where you are and say, hey, here's some time for you to get better. And however, I want you to get better at the things that are going to like help the company grow. So there's this triangle that we look at decision making through. Does it help your career? Does it help the client? And does it help the company? My friend Ryan, he's a good friend. He's got his own company in consulting, but he brought that triangle to us, and it's articulated very well what we try to do there. So that 10% time is really baked in for everyone to say, hey, throughout the week, take those 4 hours and say, I'm gonna go and take a development course on Udemy. I'm gonna build something with open source and actually get my hands dirty, because some people learn better then. I'm gonna spend some time reading a book or an article or a blog post or listen to a podcast. So it's very much time that we give that is and if you look at the bottom line of it, it's an expensive benefit, if you will. But we've seen that folks have, again, gotten better at their craft, which then leads to more value that we can provide to our clients and service our clients better. So that is something that's baked in that 10% time. We also, Kathleen, who runs our crew operations, she's bringing back, we used to have lunch and learns more, and she's bringing those back. So lunch and learns are something that we're starting to be bringing in on Fridays again. And that goes from, hey, should you choose a 15-year mortgage or a 30-year mortgage, all the way to how do you talk about, decision making and finding your purpose. So lunch and learns are another big thing that are baked in there too. And then in general, we built a culture around helping others. So we are a remote first company. We use Slack. So if you need to, like, hey, I need help with this, you see a lot of that conversation happening, and people jump in and pair with each other. And during pairing, not only does the person that's helping you learn more, but also you're obviously getting that benefit as well. So those are some things that we have built into the culture, but also that we do very intentionally from a benefits side that we stand behind, and we will continue standing behind, that really has helped us add value to our team, our company, and our clients.
Have you run into any resistance or obstacles when it comes to that?
Absolutely. Sometimes we're so busy, people are like, I don't have time for 10% time. I'm still trying to like get this done. And that's something that we understand is a problem. There is always that, how do we point someone in the right direction while not dictating exactly what they work on, but also saying, listen, we don't work on building, garden shears and wondering what the engineering is behind that, right? Like, focus your 10% time on something that's going to help the company. So that is actually something, as we've grown, has been more of our focus now, is how do we direct but not dictate? How do we help someone determine what's that best next thing that they should spend their time on? So when they do get the time, they're not spending it over here on something that's not helping them progress their career. That was not as needed, honestly, early on, because there was more senior level folks, right? Everybody kind of knew what they needed to work on. Now, as we continue to give more opportunities to folks that maybe not have had those opportunities before, and we continue to hire more junior level people and give people those opportunities to get into the software industry, which we're very, very passionate about, we understand now that's got to be a little bit more guided and not just this, hey, go take your 10% time on this. So that's one of the biggest challenges that we're working on right now is the direction.
Yeah, creating that shift, that management shift, where we're so conditioned into like managing is telling people, is dictating. I love that. We direct, not dictate. That's a good line. That might be the title of this particular episode. So if you could, just one last question, if you could offer advice to a fellow leader who is experiencing all these problems, all these new obstacles and things like that, what would you how would you tell them to incorporate a little bit of what we talked about here today into their workplace? What's your one bit of advice there?
No one ever should ask me about one bit of advice because there's three things.
So, right, that's a loaded question. That's tough.
Yeah, so I would say you're not alone. Honestly, at the end of the day, even CEOs, founders of companies, the largest companies, they have anxiety, they have stress, they're trying to work through these problems too. And I'm speaking to myself a lot right here. So by the way, so I would say focus on what you can control and not what you can't. Mm-hmm. They solely focus on the things that you control. And one thing that I actually got tattooed, it's the only tattoo I have. It is Lewin's equation. And what it says is behavior is the function of a person in their environment. What you can control in your company is the environment. You can't control what that person does. You can't control you can't try to attack the behavior, where I think a lot of people do. All you can do is focus on what you can do to help create an environment within your company that people can be successful and behave the way that you would like them to behave. So that is something that, again, I'm preaching to myself. You're going to have successes on that. You're going to have failures on that. Of course, if you got to learn, you're going to have people that you really wish would have stayed around that are going to leave. And you're going to have people wish that you probably would have let them go sooner and it caused issues. But at the end of the day, I would say focus on the things that you can control only. And when I do that, what I mean by that is control that environment so that you can have people that really want to be there and maybe create the better part that they're struggling with at home. Maybe the work becomes that thing that they really want to be, holding on to as that hope in a lot of ways.
So would you say that you're connecting what you can control with the things that you can't?
Absolutely. You have to make that. You got to create a list if you need to of the pros and cons and the things I can control and not control. But any way that works for you, that is a big thing. I think a lot of leaders are stressing out right now, and again, having to deal and struggle with how do you bring the other family life into this and making a lot of mistakes along the way. But you're not the only one, and focus on the things you can control and focus on that environment.
Yeah, they're those kids that walk into the shop. They're part of your team now. They're that employee that just on the iPad again. Like, come on.
Yeah. Well, David, I tell you what, at the end of the year, we usually go over like what are the things that we're most proud of, and we talk about the people that we hired, and we're up to 36 people, but we're up to 99 family members, right? So that is something that you always have to keep in mind that when that one person is giving you problems, there's 35 others and 80 other people behind them that you're solving that problem for. So absolutely, yeah.
That's a powerful way to look at it. Well, Trent, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this and to prove to other leaders that yeah, it's okay. You can laugh at work.
You can't laugh at that.
Special thanks to Trent Kocurek for joining us on this episode of the podcast. If you want to learn a little bit more about Airship, you can visit teamairship.com if you're looking for a new high-quality web or mobile app. Definitely hit them up. You can follow Trent on Twitter at Trent Kocurek, Kocurek, and you can also follow Airship on Twitter at Team Airship. For You Can't Laugh at That, You Can't Laugh at Work series, I've been David Horning, and thank you for listening and helping us prove that you can laugh at work. As we continue on our mission to incorporate humor into leadership in more workplaces, to engage more people, to inspire creativity and collaboration and caring, feel free to give us a like, a follow, a subscribe on whatever platform that you get your podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts, throw us a 5-star rating and a review of the way that you found these episodes to be helpful, because we want to prove that no matter how quickly change comes, no matter how uncertain the future is, no matter if your people are working from home and you're trying to find new ways to engage them remotely, remember that there is always a way to laugh at work.